from South Arabian ports, they reach Murchiri, and what they do, they unload these sellable items and hand it over to the trade guilds. And they go with the trade guilds to collecting these spices. It was not from the seashore, it was from the hinterland. Some must be come from the Mandai airport in Sri Lanka, Mandai port in Sri Lanka, some from the Pumbuhar, some from even the Malaya region. It's collected and loaded into the Muchuri ship and goes back. It takes at least 8 months for one team to go back. The half of the team goes back, half stay here and collecting the spices. And these mailmen ones is mixed with the local women, and they start living like a family. How now you understand that how the religion transfers, new caste originates. Good evening to everyone. First of all, let me thank Sangam Talks and Ms. Aparna ma'am for giving me the opportunity to explain my work in front of such an elite audience. And as introduced here, my name is Jeevan Philip, the author of Unmasking the Syriacs, The Hidden Origin of Indian Christianity, an archaeolinguistic approach. Recently, but you cannot say recently one, but because it was published 1 year back, but got attention of the media recently. Though I have approached many concerned people for coverage of the book, but rejected because of its unorthodox findings or conclusions. The majority of them do not want to disturb the emotions of this society, section of the society. This book is not intentionally written book, rather than a result of my prolonged research or study concerning the subject. I was born into a Malankara Nasrani family in North Travancore, Kerala, and educated and trained as a Nasrani. That means ancient native Christian of India. A certain incident that happened in my upper primary class persuaded me to understand and study my community and its origin. This urge has been growing along with me during my university days, so I kept on reading and taking notes on it throughout my education. This has taken more concrete steps past 5 years and resulted in writing this book called Unmasking the Syriacs. I have read reviews of opinions of some learned people that the book Unmasking the Syriacs disproves the St. Thomas origin of Indian Christianity. It has not done that great work, or it was not intended particularly to study the Indian activity of St. Thomas Apostle. Many of the people think that my intention was to negate the St. Thomas origin of Indian Christianity. No, it was not. It was rather an archaeolinguistic study to find out the possible origin of Indian Christianity in South India. That means Old Tamilagam. As usual process of the study, it requires to include the apostolic activity of St. Thomas in South India. That is, the negation of apostolic activity in South India is a byproduct of the study, not the prime result. More clearly, let me explain it. I am negating not only the apostolic activity of St. Thomas, but also the claim, the activity of Apostle Bartholomew on the western coast of India, the other claim. So please be clear that this book is not intentionally negating the apostolic origin of Indian Christianity, but rather observing the origin of Indian Christianity through an archaeolinguistic approach, which unfortunately or fortunately disproved any activity of Apostle Thomas in South India. I have said these words here as an introduction to my talk, which I hope will clear the confusion regarding my work. So let me continue. If you ask someone about the origin of Indian Christianity, you probably may get the story of Apostle Thomas. his landing at the western coast of South India, his conversion of Nambudiris in South India, precisely in Kerala, the establishment of 7.5 churches, martyrdom of Mylapore, etc. Though the story has many illogical twists and turns and contradicting plots and no proper evidences, it has become conventional history among the believers and non-believers alike. As far as the writers of the or historians of Indian Christianity are concerned, we have three groups. One which supports the apostolic origin, the other group which negates the apostolicity, and the third group prefer to walk in middle, saying that there may be or may not be apostolic activity in India. The third group takes their stand only because they do not want to offend the people, powerful lobby of Syriac Christianity in India. The majority who support the apostolic origin of Indian Christianity use the pull and push strategy to explain this position. What do you mean by pull and push strategy? When I address it as a pull and push strategy, it means using vague references indicating India with St. Thomas or Bartholomew from literally or literally works or along with the mythical stories. These mythical stories are often post-Portuguese period one from the memory of Syrian Christians of South India. The opposite group analyzes these references with the historical records and textual criticism to expose the veracity of these literary sources. Similarly, they reject the mythical claims of Syriac Christianity, indicating the contradictions within its framework and against the historical data. These groups often do extensive research on literary evidences and travelers' records to find out the historical truth behind the apostolic claims of Indian Christianity, but lack any serious work on archaeological or epigraphic studies except the translations of Pahlavi and other inscriptions on the Mount Cross and the Tarishapalli plates. Hence, the apostolicity of the Indian Christianity is still considered a riddle among the secular scholars. What I meant to say is that we have only two archaeological elements or remains till today. You can put it against the large number of archaeological elements as we get in Sasanian Empire or China or Central Asia. That is the Mount Cross at Mylapore and its a few copies and Tarishapalli plates. Surprising thing is that Apostle Thomas' Indian story revolves around the apocryphal book called Acts of Thomas, whose original copies are not available till now. We do not know the original language which it was written. Experts say maybe Syriac or Greek. We have no clear indication of the author of this book. It could be member of any Gnostic sect such as Bardaizanites or Manichaeans. Dr. Werner Sundarvan, one of the Manichaean scholars and the Pahlavi scholars of the world, states that Manichaeans valued the act of Apostle Thomas, and probably it was the Manichaean who were responsible for the book in the form of we see today. The geographical location in the Act of Thomas suggests a North Indian orientation of the story. Since the content and the philosophy of the Act of Thomas suggest a dramatic expression of Gnostic activity rather than any Christian proselytization. Church historians are cherry-picking the most appropriate portion of the Thomas Act to extend the apostolic origin of the church in South India. Other than this imaginative story, the Acts of Thomas have nothing to do with South India. This is the background, and I approach the investigation about the origin of Indian Christianity in another methodology than the usual methodology of relating to the old books and old manuscripts. This methodology is a very unique one. The transfer of any religion from its geographical origin to distant locations requires a medium, which can be called the movement of people. The movement of people certainly requires a pre-existing purpose like trade, war, calamities, or political decisions. Hence, the migration of Christianity to distant places, especially in South Asia, happened through the Afro-Eurasian trade network. That means if you want to transfer a religion or a philosophy from one place to another, you need a medium, and that medium is movement of people. That movement of people could take due to many reasons. Naturally, the sect that spread this new faith from to South Asia would have to have settlements along the ancient socio-commercial network. If they had settlements of this new faith, they should have left some archaeological evidence such as symbols, artifacts, ornaments, ritual materials, peculiar structures, etc. Studying the archaeological remains unearthed from the trade network and analyzing and comparing the structures and the styles of these remains with those unearthed from the Tamilagam will certainly explain the origin and the development of Indian Christianity. So the book proceeds with identifying Afro-Eurasian trade routes and their socio-commercial network, followed by extensive search on unearthed archaeological materials from the knots. Knots are the trade settlements of these networks. So I have identified 5 routes to southern India, especially towards the South Asia. That the first one is that Red Sea to Indian Ocean route, which starts from Alexandria to Upper Egypt and Sub-Saharan Africa and South Arabian and then Ocean, Indian Ocean, and then to Muchuri. This is the first route. This is called the Spice route. And the next route, which is starts from the Persian Gulf to Indian Ocean route. This starts from Mesopotamia, that is Charax area, and through Fars from the Persian Gulf to Barbaricon, which is now in Pakistan, to Barigasa or Baruch, then to further to Muchuri. And the third route is the purely Lang Silk route, which starts from Tyre or Antioch or Damascus and cut across the Central Asia, Merv and other things and reach up to Liang Changam in China. This major trading item was silk. And then the fourth route, China Indian Ocean route. There is another route from the South China through the Bay of Bengal. There is a route from South China to Malaya Peninsula and then to South India. Further they're circumventing the Sri Lanka and then again goes through the Red Sea route to Central Asia, Red Sea, and then to Mediterranean areas. After these extensive survey of archaeological remains unearthed from these trade routes and their analysis, I found very interesting identities of the splay dam crosses with its serifs at the corners, with the artifacts found from the Sasanian Christian geographical region, including Sasanian vassal states like Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. These splay dam crosses are a special crosses which in the center portion, joining portion, what it happens is that it is very thin. And it's when we approach the near to the end of the arms, it spread out. And this is called splay dam crosses. And end of the arms, the splay dam crosses, as the type font of the sans serif, the serif is attached, a kind of a tear blob is attached with that. This is called splay dam crosses. When you go through the entire Sasanian empire, Central Asia and China, you will find a lot of variations, artistic variations of these splay dam crosses. And this continued towards Central Asia, China, where the Syriac churches played an important role in spreading Christianity in later period. Though the splay dam crosses were originally from Byzantine churches, artistically developed by Sasanian Christianity with additional ornamentations like Sasanian spread wing or fly wing of Zoroastrianism, steps, conical stands, vegetal decorations. Here I wanted to explain that the fly wing is that, the presently in Pahlavi crosses of Mylapore, the Indian church historians and the official churches spread that it is an Indian symbol, which is a lotus, and the cross is put inside the symbol. Actually, it is not lotus. If you survey the origin of the cross from the Sasanian Empire, first it was from the Mediterranean, handed over to Sasanian Empire, and Sasanian Empire, they have developed in such an artistic form. They adopted the Sasanian symbol, the Zoroastrian symbol of the spread wing, which is plenty of examples that are given in my book about the springs. We have large number of stucco crosses, headstones, and engraved splayed arm crosses from this Syro-Turkic inscription in this particular area. Besides this, we have censers, cross inscription, jars with the cross, and other architectural remains, etc. From these unearthed materials, one can understand that the syncretic evolution of these artifacts is which can be studied and compared with unearthed archaeological remains from India. To my surprise, the archaeologists have found not even a single piece of splayed arm crosses with the blobs as serifs as any ancient up to 13th century Syriac inscribed headstones with the Nestorian style crosses from India. Isn't it interesting? Not even a single splayed arm crosses. We have only a few copies of Pahlavi inscribed crosses from South India, of which we do not have any literature before the discovery of the Mylapore cross. The Pahlavi inscribed Mylapore cross or its copies have structural differences from ancient Sasanian crosses or their evolved versions. The semiotic explanation and the translation of the Pahlavi inscriptions suggest a Gnostic origin of this ancient artifact. It is also surprising that the location of the unearthed originals had no traces of church or structures or any additional splayed arm crosses. Some of them items are indeed later day creations posterior to the discovery of Pahlavi cross. That means the only 1547, the Portuguese discovery of the Mylapore crosses, and the Indian Christianity only came to know about these such kind of a crosses only later period. The entire Portuguese literature describe about this. What we can deduct from such a situation? The geographical region of Sasanian Christianity and its extended field where it took a larger role in spreading Christianity, like Central Asia, China, have plenty of Sasanian artifacts and crosses with the splayed arms, Syro-Turkic inscriptions, that is headstones, but not even a single such artifact before 15th century from Indian subcontinent, where the supposed apostolic Christianity claimed to have survived and thrived from the 1st century till today. Look, naturally, this comparative study brought out the historical impossibility of migration of Christianity from Sasanian Empire, but we cannot confirm it until and unless find out the persons behind the Pahlavi inscribed crosses of South India. Which means is if I put forward is that only there is not available, so it cannot be. No, it is not needed. We need additional evidences and supporting evidences. Moreover, we require parallel evidences to support this notion. To do that, I studied the symbol of crosses in detail. Its pre-Christian origins, its evolutionary development, the initial meaning it represents, etc. Besides this, how did it adopt Christianity? And the time of the adoption, why didn't early Christian artifacts depict the crosses up to the Edict of Milan 313 CE? What is the difference between the instrument used for Jesus' crucifixion and the present-day cross based on archaeological excavations, etc., are also discussed in detail in the book. Besides this, one has to study the cross symbol used by the other religions like Buddhism, Manichaeism, etc., to understand the ownership of Pahlavi crosses of South India. It also took me to study the evolution of crosses, styles, and decorations, addendums, etc., from the Mediterranean to Sasanian Empire, Central Asia, and up to China. Since these Pahlavi crosses are not a single unit crosses structure, rather it contains bas-relief structure with the different constituencies, symbols representing unique meaning of your religion or philosophy behind it. This investigation led me to study different groups of Christianity, especially origin of Syriac Christianity. To my surprise, the Manichaeans, Tatian, there's another group called following Tatianites, and the Syriac Christianity all have a common root in Edessa. Edessa is in, now it is in Turkey, presently in the ruin state. The greatest poet ever produced by Syriac Christianity witnessed this in his writings and textual critics and scholars have identified that several stories and personalities like Maradai were probably Manichaean apostle Adda, who was leading the figure in Edessa. This was quite interesting information and helped me to understand the unique culture of Syriac, Manichaeans, Tathians, all these sects used initially Tathians Bible called Diatherason. What I mean to say is that when Mara Prem is the greatest poet, after he born in Nisibis, and he left Nisibis and migrated to Edessa. So Edessa, his writings and poems include whatever happening during that time. So the historians and the scholars of textual history studied his poems and find out that the Syriac Christianity, what they propagate as Mar Adai, was actually Mar Adda of the Manichaeanism, which means the Manichaean, Syriac Christianity, and Tathianites, the three groups used Diatherason as the first Bible, which is now uncanonical Bible, so long. And after that, there was a split. So Syriac Christianity moved towards the Proto-Orthodoxy, and the Manichaean church moved to the Gnosticism. That is what happened. The most important discovery of this book is the identification of the Pahlavi cross based on different scholar studies is incorporating Manichaeism, linguistic analysis, and semiotic explanations. The Pahlavi crosses are not witness to any ancient Christianity. Rather, they are the vestiges of an ancient Manichaean community that existed in the old Tamilagam. Manichaean postulates two ontological principles: light and darkness. The universe is divided into two realms, it's the light realm and the dark realm, where all souls want to be served from the clutches of the land of dark, which binds the soul of living matter. The role of the Manichaean prophet Jesus, adopted from Christianity, is to save the soul of humans through his crucifixion and sufferings from the clutches of human flesh, represented by creatures of dark forces in like Makara. This Makara is represented in the Mylapore cross, which we will talk later. The demonic creature of the land of darkness in Manichaean cosmology has an artistic and theological representation in Manichaean iconography, while Persian Christianity has nothing to do with the Magara, the demonic creature depicted in religion like Manichaeism, Hinduism, and Buddhism. This Magara is an aquatic animal. It's a special animal. It's a shape of what you call crocodile, but they have horns like elephant, and it attacks the seafaring people. And the Manichaean representation is that they captured in the Pahlavi cross, it was explained, it is that the two Magaras on the capital is situated. And the mouth of the Magaras, there is a pearl type of thing, which is caught by these Magarasas. And the pearl type of thing is rounded in an arch. It is released and going up through the wind, which is the symbolization of Manichaean ontological principle, light and darkness. So the darkness, that the human body is capturing the light particle, that is human soul. So the human body represents the Magara, and the human soul represent the pearls. So Magara capturing the soul and released by the crucifixion of Jesus, which is represented by what you call the Manichaean cross, which is represented in the Pahlavi cross. The descending dove represents the Mani, the prophet of the Manichaean pantheon, who claimed himself as the paraclete of the historical Jesus offered to his followers. The depiction of the pearl coming from the Magara's mouth is rising is probably a representation of the liberating of the bounded soul from the clutches of human flesh, represented by Magara, the creature of the land of darkness through the power of Manichaeanism, symbolized by the Manichaean cross. Interestingly, this very parallel with the imagery represented by the portrait found in the Manichaean temple of Kocho by A. Lewon Koch in 1913 CE, which displays Manichaean Jesus with the Mesopotamian cross of Spladons. The study substantiates its findings as further with the 8th century Chinese mannequin Heimskral. It is still there in the British Museum, housed in the British Library, number S2659, a hymn in praise of Jesus and calling on him to save the soul from the attack of Makaras. What else you need? Surprisingly, the latest translation of Pahlavi inscriptions on the Mylapore cross by Allahabad University researcher and epigraphist Mr. Shulanand Hemaraj, questioning the very basis of 13-14 translations previously followed by the mythical stories of Syriac Christianity in India, corroborates with the position of the Gnostic origin of these cross structures. Beside all these evidences, the travelers' records or narrations from the Marco Polo to the Portuguese excavations indicate that there was no such Nestorian settlement from the 4th century. Isn't it interesting? There are many scholars, including Ishwar Sharan, proposes an early Syriac Persian migration of Thomas Kana to India without suggesting any evidences. I think this is largely very enthusiasm to negate the historicity of the Apostle Thomas and his martyrdom at Mylapore. By doing this, they are committing a serious error in historical studies, preponing the origin of Christianity in India by at least 6 centuries. They should have thought that the documentary evidence connects St. Thomas with India, while the Thomas Kana stories have no references or written documentation in any of the ancient books of Persian Christianity or Mesopotamian Christianity. I think this needs a little more explanation. See, Ishwar Sharan and group negate St. Thomas story and capture Thomas Kana and put the origin of Christianity in the 4th century. What I am saying, the Thomas story is unhistorical and the Thomas Kana story is more unhistorical than the Thomas story, because Apostle Thomas story, you have canonical or apocryphal books or hagiographic works, but Thomas Kana, you have nothing. You have nothing. But still, people accept Thomas Kana and reject Thomas Apostle. What I mean to say is that the same case with the Thomas Kana, Apostle Thomas and the Thomas Kana. So the Christianity is not originated in the 4th century, rather it originated much later. Similarly, some of the reviewers of my book misunderstood that I support the Persian migration stories of Thomas Kana as the historical incident. Yes, some of them I read, some of them telephoned me and that you are supporting Thomas Kana stories. I have categorically rejected the Persian migration story of Thomas Kana or any societal migration to India as early as the beginning of the 7th century. They misunderstood that the book proposes a later day migration of Thomas Kana by 7th or 8th century. No, not at all. Let me clarify my position by stating that name Thomas Kana is used not as a historical character from Edessa, Persia, but rather a leader of Manichaean community existed in Mylapore, probably 8th or 9th century. I could have used any other name, maybe George, Luke, or any other name, but selected this one because it's more sentimentally attached to one group of present-day Christianity to propose a separate identity of themselves. So the Thomas Kana in the subconscious mind of the Christianity exists. And I use that there was a leader in the name of Thomas Kana who later converted to Nestorianism and migrated to western coast of Kerala, that is Kodungalur. As I explained in my first chapter, dealing with the Indian Ocean trade, the migration of the religion takes place through socio-commercial network, which primarily concentrate on the male-dominated traders as having settlements with the local women and thus forming the community. In this particular case, the community of Manichaeans converted to Nestorianism and probably later migrated to the Kerala coast due to the political disturbances. This migration of Kodungalur explains the formation of two separate castes among the Syriac Christians of South India, later termed as Southeast and Northeast. This is very interesting. What I proposes is that I reject any societal migration from the Persia or anywhere else, Persia or Edessa, anywhere else to South India, because there is a reason behind it. See, you have to read my 4th chapter, People and Places Straight. In that chapter, I explained why this could not have happened. There are 3 reasons. One is archaeological study. The second one, ceramic studies. Then the genetic studies by Palanichami. These 3 things corroborates the political situation existed in that time. These 4 things has come together, strongly reject any kind of Persian migration at the 4th century or 5th century. I'll explain it. Also, kindly note that I have explained why there was no community migration, Sasanian Persian, India, based on archaeological studies, ceramic studies. This is based on the Catrian Rutan studies on the potsherds. What did he do? He collected all the potsherds and amphoras, particular types which are available through South India as well as Red Sea, and then the South Arabia and Myos Hormuz and Alexandria and Upper Mesopotamia. And they collected the potsherds from Eddur, which is entry port to the Persian Gulf and Persian area, and Syria, just upper to the Persian Gulf area. What surprising thing is that the potsherds and amphoras collected from the Red Sea route is comparable, unique, the same thing. And this potsherd comes up to Eddur, that also very few. But none of these potsherds are collected from the Persian area or Syrian area, this Fars area. Why it is happening? This is, Catrian Newton says, the trade with the South India between Persia and South India started only after the end of the 6th century. It's very rightly. Why? Because Sasanian Empire captured Persian Gulf and South Arabia from the Ogham Empire only by 575. You understand that? So this is a very valid evidence. This corroborate with the Palanichami's genetical studies. The particular mitochondrial DNA collected from Calcutta to South India Tamils and through the route from the Red Sea and the Mediterranean and these Upper Mesopotamia, you will get. They have found the skeletons from the Upper Mesopotamia, which is not similar to anywhere in Syria or anywhere in Mediterranean, which was similar to old Tamils. You understand? The genetics play the roots and play the supporting evidence. So his Palanichami's explanation is that the traders from the Tamil traders, Tamilagam traders, were settled in Upper Mesopotamia. You can understand that how beautifully the history, along with archaeology as well as genetical studies and ceramic studies, explain the history. We were spreading 4th century Ottoman migrations, while the modern historical studies suggest that no, it is not possible. So that is why I say there is no migration of group migration towards South India. Then what did happen? It was happened that the 4th chapter, I explained that how the trade takes place. Because the male-dominated trade team comes, and how they comes from South Arabian ports, they reach Muchiri, and what they do? They unload these sellable items and hand it over to the trade guilds. And they go with the trade guilds to collecting these spices. It was not from the seashore, it was from the hinterland. Some must be come from the Mandai airport in Sri Lanka, Mandai port in Sri Lanka, some from the Pumbuhar, some from even the Malay region. It's collected and loaded into the Muchiri ship and goes back. It takes at least 8 months for one team to go back. The half of the team goes back, half stay here and collecting the spices. And these male ones is mixed with the local women, and they start living like a family. How now you understand that how the religion transfers, new caste originates. This methodology, the Arabs developed, the Muslims developed, the Christianity developed, and so other religions developed. And hence, the origin of Christianity in India is through the conversion of Manichaean settlers and other proto-Orthodox groups that existed in Old Tamilagam by Nestorian traders post 10th century period. These trade settlements and they trade settlements families, many proto-Orthodox beliefs and Manichaean believers, many groups. Thus, at the end of the 10th century, possibly converted to Nestorianism. That was the origin of Christianity first. That is why we are not getting any of the splay down crosses from the South India or from Indian Peninsula. So you will see that suddenly after the 13th or 14th century, you will get many remains. And from the 1490, after these bishops of Central Asian bishops, like Seleucian bishops or Nestorian bishops starts coming, they brought Syriac inscription and everything. That is why I am asking you, there are people who suggest, no, we have evidences. What my suggestion is that if you have evidences, come with that evidences, but not hagiographical works, not references in the books, at least material evidence. Because if you had a settlement in Mylapore, you should have at least 1 or 2 copies of splay down crosses and its ornamentation, its evolution. These all things is proves there was no such Christianity from the beginning till the 10th century. So now I came to the end of my talk. I think I have explained it well. You can, if anybody have any doubts, you can ask questions.
And if there aren't, sir, what are the usual misconceptions about your book? In fact, I would like you to explain more about why the publishers were reluctant to, why they thought it is some conspiracy theory.
See, the thing is that, the media actually works in a different way. Especially in Kerala, it works in a very different way. The religion and the social groups have a very hold. And I approached, after publishing, can you do a review on this book? They turned the book and they say that it's a very rich data. We need somebody is educated to understand these things. And they go into the end and the final conclusions and the things as they say that this affects some section of the society and we will look into it. It passed 1 year until a brilliant editor took 2 months and he completely read the book and he said that, yes, I am going to do it. After that, one by one, it starts. I think it will continue because if anybody want to approach my book to know what is actually happened, they will appreciate it.
Also, if you want to give some sound bites about this is a good platform where in the promotion of a book, if you would like to bring out certain passages specifically over here, you're welcome to do so.
I couldn't get you specific what?
Any specific concepts or the points or even passages from the book, if you would like to present right now, you're welcome to do that.
Passages exactly I cannot tell you, but I'll tell you that this book has got 9 chapters. It is not the usual methodology it followed. It simply says that, and I approach the problem issue. What is the origin of Indian Christianity? And how can we find it out with the modern scientific techniques? The usual historical methodology is that what you refer to some old manuscripts, and then what they do, there is somebody has written, and so it is a history. And what we have, there is a old Christian ancient community is there, so they'll attach it and they'll say this is history. Actually, if you read the Portuguese excavation reports, you will find it that, because at that time the priest, the Roman Catholics priest, the brilliant men, there were a group said that you got two skeleton. We have already a full skeleton in Ornota. And do you think St. Thomas got three skeletons? And ma'am, you will understand that. How did they find out the two skeleton? Which one is St. Thomas? It's a very, very interesting. They find it out that the one skeleton is much fair, and the other skeleton was dark. So they decided that the fair skeleton is St. Thomas and moved to Goa, and they start worshipping. See, the thing is that Christianity and the Jesus, it's a brilliant religion and a very good philosophy. But the problem is that church make something else. Church should understand that St. Thomas' story is not at all required to spread the Jesus philosophy. You don't have to create propagandist stories to build your ancientness or antiquity. You are antique. You are part and parcel of India, and your history is there. The Malankara Nasranis are the brilliant people contributed to Indian independence. You can say these community produced ministers from the Nehru's time, best educators, Amul Kurian, and they contributed the building of the society. How many people are there? Hardly 50 lakh people. And the 50 lakh people contributed to Indian nation building, and you are making such a bogus stories to create antiquity. Think again. You come straight forward. Science is so brilliant and advanced. Whatever maybe you spread as stories, which will be thrown out, and you will be a laughing stock. Listen to me. What I wanted to say to all churches and church historians: you buy my book, read it 2 times or 3 times. If you don't understand, pick up the telephone and ask me. I'll explain it to you. Or if you have any evidences with you, material evidences, not hagiographic or XYZ books, there is written and or camouflage books, hagiographic books or libet, you come with a cross, splay down cross. I have explained, see, from Sasanian to China, I have followed the evolution of syncretic evolution of crosses. You can understand brilliantly. From the 6th century or 7th century, you will get from Central Asia. And you will get in Mongolia. Wherever you go, you will get a tomb or a headstone or anything. It is given in the photographs, is given in my book. And another thing I wanted to tell Ishwasharan and group, please don't spread Thomas Cana story and predate Christian origin. Thomas Cana story is not accepted by the best historian ever from the Middle East. That is Emin Jana. That is Chaldean, the Nestorian historian, and he rejected it, that story. My question to each and every Christian and non-Christian: are you following the modern historiography or are you following the myth? Every myth can be tested through archaeology, linguistics, and genetics. You can see my chapter on linguistic Pahlavi reading, and the brilliant man, Shilanand Hamaraj, Allahabad University. But he has mistaken already. He said that it is Christian cross, but his translation was very good. And it is very much appropriate with the ontological principles of Panikaism. So the translation joins with the ontological principles and the cardicology as well as the semiotic explanation of Pahlavi crosses. It's joined together. And the excavation report of the Portuguese. What else you need? Where are you taking us? So please Stop spreading Knanaya story. That is over. Christianity has only originated from the 10th century. There is no harm in it. Accept it. Before that, there were proto-orthodox groups. See, Butterman and the people, they blindly dismantled the ancient history of Christianity. So from 1st century to 200, there were so many groups. So many groups believed differently. And these groups, some of the groups came in. You cannot name it as Christian. Rather, I would call it, they are the Hindu caste. Because they are Indian. They're civilization Indian. Look at any Malangra Nasrani family. They use all whatever the Nayars do, they'll also do. The Western Christianity came in and brought out all those stories to spread such a thing that this Christianity came in 1st century, so we are oldest one. No, it is not. The Christianity came in as such what you call Christianity from 10th century only. That is by converting Manichaeans and these proto-Orthodox groups. Why I am saying different groups, I can tell you. We have collected, we have unearthed only 3 Pahlavi original crosses. One is from Anuradhapura, Sri Lanka, one is from Goa, and one is from Mylapore. In Kerala, crosses all are 15th century crosses. It's all copies, fake copies. I have explained it why it is fake. And that is why I am saying after the migration from the Mylapore, why did they migrate? It's a political, socio-political reasons. Because Arabs were involving in the trade business and they were capturing that area with the help of the locals. They have to move out. So that is why, see, these 2 castes, Vadakkumbhagam and Tekkumbhagam, Canaanites and the Malangra Nasrani. And after that, Portuguese came. Portuguese took a section, a small section, and they developed at Syro Malabar Church. Then the Protestants came, CSI Church. And all the Western churches took away a splendor groups and they built it up the church. This is what happened. In order to integrate with the Western Christianity, the Indian Christians, forgetting their age-old practices and ancientness, they create stories. Understand? And Christ does not need any of the apostolicity of any apostles. Because what did Christ say? You follow me. You don't need any chair to follow him. Do you? No. So, again, Indian Christians can revive their ancientness and culture, identifying them with this India and Indian culture, and forgetting and removing all those what you call the false stories, as the apostolicity and all those things. This is my stand.
Yes, if you could just briefly state why you have sort of put aside the entire Gospel of Thomas. I mean, what are the technical reasons for that? Because that is the interesting thing is that the Gospel of Thomas gets the chronology gives a very ancient chronology, but the geography is completely different. It is in the apparently in the Indo-Parthian kingdom.
Yeah, Indo-Parthian kingdom.
Yeah. So, what makes you and it also mentions a historical king. I think Gundaferes.
Gundaferes.
Yeah. So when it mentions these kinds of historical settings, why are you putting aside the entire gospel as being not trustworthy? I mean, there may be bits and pieces that you can take from it and reconstruct. Don't you think so?
I'll tell you that. Do you have any knowledge about the hagiographies, apocryphas, and these stories as they create? Because I'll tell you, you have no original copy of Gospel Act of Thomas. You don't know the language which it is originally written. And who wrote that book? We don't know. And what is the content? What is the content? It is not Christian. It is Gnostic. And Gnostic book is used by Christians to establish their purpose. You understand the logic? A book, Gnostic book, which tells the entire anti-Christian philosophy used by Christian to establish their historicity. Don't you think it is called cherry picking? You don't do cherry picking in history. I haven't rejected Acts of Thomas. Why? I just mentioned it, but not gone detail, because it is a story. Many parts have to be proved again. Even we have coins of Gondofor. Or else, actually the Gondoforus was there, or any other king, we don't know. See, in my book, I specifically talk about the what you called Bhavishya Purana. I don't know whether you have read my book or not. In Bhavishya Puranam, there is a white man with this white red light seen by the kings of Turancha, and it is explained there. And the German professors are gone to thoroughly and studied and find it out that it is not Jesus. It is actually Mani. And this Bhavishya Purana is used by Christian evangelists to convert Hindus in North India as well as in South India. What I wanted to tell you is that people have to seriously read my book. Don't listen to myths. Don't listen to the stories. Don't listen to the hagiographies. You first put forward the material evidences, then check the stories. Then you will understand history. See, history has a process, holistic history. Earlier, what we used to do is that we search for the manuscripts, stories, and then corroborate with myths, and they make an extrapolation, they write it as history. It is not the correct method now. You find it out the possible ways of archaeological remains, and that archaeological remains compared, and that comparison should be compared with or put on a spreadsheet and compared with other mythological stories or what manuscripts. Then again, you have to cross-check linguistically. I'll give you an example. You know, the Syriac language. Syriac language has many variations. It started at Aramaic. The Aramaic, earlier Aramaic, its prototype, it was Phoenician script. Then they changed it to Estrangelo. Then in 800, around 800, 400 and 800, there's before that Aramaic split into Western Aramaic and Eastern Aramaic. The Western Aramaic was Jesus spoke, and the Eastern Aramaic, which is called Syriac. And the Syriac again split into different Eastern Syriac and Western Syriac, which is from the 800 to 400. And you bring a document in this Eastern Syriac and tell me that this is older and the BC, do I agree? It cannot be, because you need a script study and the evolution of the script. That is what linguistics has done to historical studies. And in this case, Pahlavi language, I said the Pahlavi inscribed in the Pahlavi crosses of Mylapore is not the Christian Pahlavi. It is the Pahlavi or a book Pahlavi. And we have Christian Pahlavi cross in Hirath. So that is why I took hagiography slightly. No, I never negate. I just test it through archaeology, linguistics, and genetics. That is my approach.
Sir, I'd ask you to be a bit brief with your questions because we have about 7-8 questions now. Ramakrishnan-ji, do you have a follow-up question? You can just nod your head.
That creates a problem because many of the historical personalities, Ashoka included, are often known only from epigraphy and inscriptions, and there is no material foundation stone laid by Ashoka or his sword or anything like that. So if we use the approach that every document has to be backed up by archaeology, linguistics, etc., then I think history will be full of holes.
No,
right?
that's opinion, but my opinion is different. See, Ashoka's case, you have Ashoka Stambhas. You have details of it. The only thing is that we unearthed or found out much later stage. That's only. So you cannot write history negating archaeological excavations. And if you don't have any archaeological excavations, you have logical deductions. These logical deductions is, you can raise from anywhere, from the carbon dating methodology to even the two manuscript textual criticisms. If somebody produces a textual text or manuscripts, and a man who knows that language thoroughly, he do the textual criticism, will find out. Even in the archaeology, I'll tell you, there are layers. If you found from first layer, there's supposed to be a recent one. And if you have a material from the first layer and you argue that it is from the BC 500, archaeologists will laugh at you. That's it. See, science has did a wonderful thing to history. Because earlier people were spreading all sorts of stories to suit their personal benefit, their societal benefit, their caste benefit, their religious benefit. Now, everything is questioned.
There is a question which guest Monu John Philip is asking. Just wanted to know, is there any mannequin groups that exist today?
No, there up to 16th century, there were mannequin groups in China, the original mannequin groups. And I have mentioned there, it's a place also, I don't remember exactly that way, there is a research going on, and a lot of findings will be coming in the next 5 to 10 years. Because Chinese scholars are bent on it, and they're doing it. Because Sam Liu, SMC Liu is a brilliant scholar. He gone to that temple and he researched and produced many books on it. Now they are all extinguished. Extinguished means, change their religions and adopted to modern Chinese religions. And you will get modern mannequins, like, West, the modern mannequins are there, but you cannot say that they are mannequins of the ancient mannequins.
I think you were saying that essentially then the 10th century is when the history begins in India. But
10th century, pardon me, 10th century? Christian history.
Yeah, Christian history in India from 10th century onwards, but they have spread the myth that it is from the 1st century.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to understand is, what is their thinking behind doing that? What is the advantage they're getting? Is it because it's closer to Jesus' birth and they're trying to show some sort of authenticity, or that when he was here, that is when Christianity spread to India? What is the reason they would do that?
Yeah, let me explain it. See, there is a colonial aspect to it. The thing is that when Portuguese arrived in Kapad, Kerala, why did they arrive? They arrived for trade, searching for Christians. Why did they search for Christians? The silk route, silk was very costly. The Chinese silk brought by Persian merchants, sold with a huge margin and sold to the Mediterranean. And this was continued later in the modern age also. When the Arabs captured, the entire area was blocked. Wherever the raw material from the India could not reach the Mediterranean and Rome and the Western world, only through Arabs. They were mending money. That is why Portuguese surrounded and came through the Cape of Good Hope to Kerala, what is called India. And to do an unknown land, a trade with an unknown land, you need somebody to help you. And they heard that there was a king, and that king and the Christian people in the east, and the Manuel, king of Portugal, will ask help from him. And that is why they came and they found out Christian. They started trade with the Samorin, but Samorin was already engaged with the Muslims, Arabs, and they was fighting. He changed his chef to Kochi, and Kochi Raja was enemy to Samudri. And what happened is that Kochi was aligned. And you can understand that in Samudri's kingdom, there were no Nazranis. The Nazranis were on the middle portion because they were in fight with the Arab Muslims, because both are traders. So they accepted the Kochi Raja's thing and they get aligned with the Nasranis. And they started doing business. And they heard that the story of some tomb in what you call in Mylapore, through not Nazranis, through Armenian traders. You read any Portuguese documentation, they go to know through the Armenian traders and the Marco Polo's writings. They went there, they find it out, they made it. This is the golden opportunity because this is the Christian space. So the Manuel, the king of Christians, and this thing belongs to us. The story is changed. But unfortunately, Portuguese was quarreled with Malankara Nazranis. But they had money. They given money to the present-day Syro-Malabarians and took away from us. So they joined with the Portuguese. And they are called the Syro-Malabar Catholics today. Now they understood what the Western Christianity did to them, and they now trying to reverse back. So what I mean to say that everything has got a trade and coloniality. So that is why they made the story for the benefit of their trade. And these churches get along with it only because if St. Thomas is not proselytized India, particularly South India, then what will be the claims of the chairs of the priesthood? They'll not have any chairs like that. Unfortunately, what I mean to say, fortunately, I want to say is that if the Christian intellectuals, specifically Malankara Nazrani intellectuals, they understand there is no need of any chair, any apostolicity to establish your antiquity. Your antiquity is your culture, your tradition. There is no need to attach yourselves with the Western world so that you are from the first century. It is a kind of what you call the false understanding. I think that explains your question. I think.
Yes, I think I'm a little bit probably confused. Forgive me for that. But you said that they can connect directly with their traditions. They don't have to connect with the apostles necessarily, and that understanding is not quite there. But the traditions, what traditions would they be? Would they still be Christian traditions, or they are like local mixed with the Hindu traditions? How will they connect that with the Indian Christianity? I'm not too quite sure I understand that.
Yeah, I understand that. Quite often people will come up with such kind of questions. I'll explain it to you. Have you heard about a scholar called Bud Ehrman?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, the Bud Ehrman he's essentially a Greek textual critic, and he was a believer. He's only 20 or 30 years. He closed his room and studied the old manuscripts of biblical manuscripts from 1st century to 200. There are so many books he has written. He find out that what history propagated by the conventional churches is not exactly the same, because the Bible itself contradicts. The Luke contradicts with Mark, Mark contradicts with John. I'm not questioning Bible. Bible is not 100% history, but it has elements of history. That's it. But the thing is that Jesus, what his philosophy, does not require any kind of authoritarianism or any kind of a politics of the church. If you want to state that there is no need to attach with any particular apostle to understand the philosophy of Jesus. If you say that you need to attach with apostles and apostolicity, then there are new Christians. If tomorrow somebody convert to Christianity and he cannot connect with that, won't he be a Christian? Look at our great Mahatma Gandhi. He himself addressed as, I believe in Christ. I think Mahatma Gandhi is better Christ than me, Christian than me. So church, its administration, developmental process, theology, liturgy, everything is needed. Everything is needed. But the only thing is that you have to make a line between false history and the truth. Look at the sermons of Jesus Christ and activities. He loved the sinners. He said, I don't reject the people, the painful, the sorrowful. Let them come to me. And today, what church is? Of course, church is doing a very wonderful book in many areas, but their history, their administrative things is, and then many more bad things are they are taking place in the world. So, specifically to answer to your question, no, there is no need to attach with any church or any apostolicity. Still, you can be a Christian, or still you can be a very good attached with Christ. And still, as an organization, I also part and parcel of a church. But I give all alms to my church. But doesn't mean that the priesthood never takes over my mind. That's the wrong thing. That's a wrong thing. You don't need to create a story that this chair was established by St. Thomas, then only you have apostolicity. That is the most idiotic expressions ever produced by Christian church. Because it goes against the advice of Jesus Christ.
The term Syrian Christian for Indian community, is it erroneous?
Yeah. See, the thing is that, historically, you will get any Syriac inscription or anything related to Syriac only from the 14th century. Now, how do you call before that? Christianity started from 10th century. Before that, proto-Orthodox groups were there, Manichaeans and other groups were there, or religion of Jesus, you can say, were there. Then how can you call them a Syriac Christian? The Syriac Christianity, Syriacized Christian, you have to say. That means colonial period, the Nestorians and the West Syria came and subjugated this church and spread all false stories and made history, and they become Syriac Christian. And what are the Syriac Christians got? Any Syriac culture? No. They have Indian culture. They do all what Nayars do, what Nambudris do. They do say the same thing. And you're still calling yourself a Syriac. My proposition, it starts from I think 15 years back. As I said, your church should be called Malangara Nasrani Church or Malangara Church. And you should be yourself called Hindu Nazrani. If it is a Hindu Nayar, you can call Hindu Nazrani, nothing else. You don't need to call yourself Syriac, and which is a colonial product.
The question is with the reference to the trail of crosses described.
Pardon me, trade of crosses.
Trail of crosses.
Trail of crosses, okay.
So just this much. Probably
I couldn't get you. Trail of crosses described what he wants.
Probably they want more of an explanation about it.
Trail of crosses.
Yeah.
Do I need to start all over again? The crosses, trail of crosses, I'll tell you. Story of crosses. If he needs the pre-Christian cross stories and the crucifixion of Jesus and the crosses, then I can explain it to you. That's a chapter for mine. I haven't explained anything regarding that, because the cross as a symbol adopted by Christianity by 4th century. Before that, there was no cross. There were 10 or 8 symbols like anchor, fruits, then what you call dove, and like that symbols were there in Christianity. Christianity and Christians were afraid to be branded with the cross. Actually, the pre-200 AD CE crosses all belongs to pagans. Pagan used to laugh at Christians with the cross, because cross is used to kill people. Kill whom? The downtrodden, the culprits, thieves, murderers. All those people are killed by using cross. And which cross? It is not the cross of Latin cross now we are using. It was the Tau cross, T cross. The arrangement, I have explained it in my book. It is stauro. The Greek word is stauro and patibulum. And what is that? Stauro is, in Middle East, there were hardly any wood available. Only softwood are available. So wood has to import it for this hardwood. So what they do, there is a space for the hanging the culprits. What they do, they put a stauro. And the culprit or the contempt person tortured and binds a patibulum through his hand. And bind it, and he walks towards the stauro. And the soldiers hangs it and attach with it. This is called patibulum stauro attachment, Tau cross. There are 4 or 5 scholars studied archaeologically and produced many details of it. And it is available, all details are available in my book. And the people say from Via Doloroso, something like that, Latin, I don't know Latin. See, the Christ takes the 8 feet cross and walks towards the Golgotha, where he hanged. It was not historically correct, because the Israel's lanes are 2 feet to 4 feet lanes, and the terrain is ups and down. You cannot, after torture, you cannot take this 8 feet cross, Latin cross, towards that hill area. And it was actually the patibulum only he took. This is the historical explanation. And present day cross adopted by Christianity only after Constantine's Edict of Milan, 330. And historically it is proved.
Ramakrishnan ji has a question. Do you think that Jesus was a historical person, given that there were only textual accounts of him, starting with Josephus? Additionally, the Gospels have multiple textual layers that have undergone reactions, maybe.
See, as far as my understanding and my reading the old manuscripts books and the scholars boxes, I think Jesus is a historical figure. It is not my studies, is because people like Bud Ehrman, who does not believe in any kind of a Christian belief, or he's not a believer. He categorically said there are more than 10 historical references to Christianity. No, not Christ, Jesus Christ. And he's a historical figure. And those who spread these kind of news does not have any kind of a historical documentation at all.
Thomas Kuruvilla has this question to ask. Do you support the claim that there were Jewish diaspora in South India and St. Thomas may have been sent to spread the gospel? Specifically, the coming destruction of the temple in AD 70 and end of the Jewish law?
It's a very good question. See, the diaspora migration to South India, you have to understand the trade and the ancient trade with the southern India, particularly India. I'll explain it to you very briefly. If an Alexandrian merchant want to take his sellable good to Muchuri, what he do? He first arrange the money, takes his goods, and put it on some camel or what you call the elephant, and brought it to Coptos, and from Coptos to Myos Hormos, and then through the Red Sea to South Arabian provinces, and where he takes mother ships 41 days to reach there. So the people comes along with this, they mingle with, that's always males. They mingle with these locals and they marry and settle down there because it's a wishful business. And the other thing is that the north, you have a different ethnic people to facilitate the trade. Like Myos Hormos, you will have Mahots from India. You have cotton dealers from India. And you have wheat dealers in Muchuri, from Arabic wheat dealers. Because these tradesmen need to eat something. They don't eat rice. Romans don't eat rice. They need. And that is why Erythrael very briefly describe about all those things. And in such situation, this diaspora means not exclusive community. That's a mixed community. First understand. Otherwise, you check with any claimant like Nanaics, genetical data. Their mitochondrial data is as equivalent as any of the other people down in South Tamil Nadu, tribal. Mine as well as their mitochondrial data is the tribes. There is nothing harm in it. But my X chromosomes, Y chromosomes are somewhere else. Maybe similar to the Jewish, maybe similar to the Yemenis, maybe similar to Middle East. You cannot say. Because in those times, the people mix. And that is why. So, exclusive diaspora, no, I don't agree. There may be few migrations in the later period, like, the Spanish Jews or Portuguese Jews migrated to Kochi and they did a very good business. And the black Jews thing, you have to say that, AD 70, there is a destruction of the temple, so the people are came, but we have no evidence to suggest that. But there are people might have come to this place and settled down there, but they have already amalgamated into the Kerala society. That's all. And as far as St. Thomas came, I'm not saying, St. Thomas visit to Kerala is impossible. I'm saying as far as evidence is concerned, there is no chance. There is no chance, because if St. Thomas built a church and they had a connections from the 4th century Middle Syria or the Seleucia, then they should have left some remnants as archaeological remnants in these places. See, at least a family settled in Muchuri needs to cook his food. And there is Bartan, what you call utensils, should have some kind of signs, like in the Middle East. And their church or their ornament means liturgy needs some kind of ornamentation to complete their liturgy. And these all things has happens. This is a human life, civilized life. So if you don't have, that means you don't have that kind of a group existed here. Those group existed here never had the liturgy of the Syria or liturgy of Mediterranean. They had the liturgy of Muchuri or liturgy of Kerala or Cherala or what you call Tamilagam. Ultimately, liturgy of India, you can say. That is why when Portuguese came, Ramayana story was recited in the churches, pallis of Malankara Nasranis. The dramas were played. Portuguese stopped it.